Welcome to Doc Secret, the show where we uncover the playbooks, strategies, and stories behind the most successful dental and medical practice owners and the companies that serve them. This show is all about building the best practice. Whether you're a dental or medical student dreaming of private practice, a seasoned doctor looking to grow or sell, or an investor exploring the healthcare space, this podcast is for you. I'm your host, Kevin Carl, and in today's episode, we're diving into the world of psychotherapy and the process of building a thriving 60, yes, 60 person practice. Let's get started. Welcome to Doc Secret. Joining me today is Marjorie Kreppel. Marjorie is the founder of the Counseling Center Group, which provides individual, couples, family, and group mental health counseling. The Counseling Center Group is a group therapy practice with a team of more than 60 therapists and support staff. Marjorie has been involved in a number of research and clinical initiatives. Been involved, for example, in a grant-based study at Georgetown University related to preventing symptoms of depression in mothers of children with autism spectrum disorder, and has traveled to Germany to present on ASD on behalf of the American Counseling Association. Marjorie has also been a leader with Autism Speaks, including helping to found the Washington, D.C. chapter. Marjorie and/or her practice have been recognized in Bethesda magazine an astounding 9 years, including 8 years in a row, and now recognized in additional publication awards in Arlington, Virginia, and Red Bank, New Jersey. Marjorie received her Bachelor of Science degree in Business Management with a psychology concentration from the Rochester Institute of Technology and her Master of Arts degree in Clinical Mental Health Counseling from Marymount University. And to top all of this off, I have never read a longer list of certifications, from Gottmelden Level 3 to being DBT Linehan Board of Certification Certified Clinician to many, many more. Most surprising of all, Marjorie has previously enjoyed a successful 20-year career in marketing. Marjorie, welcome to the program.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Marjorie, let's start with the transition. I can only imagine, after 20 years in marketing, what called you into therapy?
Yeah. So, I was going through some life changes and wanted to, work towards a direction in which I was in business for myself. And with a lot of years in marketing, I feel that the two biggest skill sets in marketing are perspective taking and change, which are the same two skill sets you need in the therapy world. So, at in my mid 40s, I decided to start all over again, go back to grad school. I started with taking one class as a non-matriculating student just to test out the waters. Loved it and went full force from there.
Wow. Well, having made that transition, what is your passion now? What topics and challenges in society are particularly important to you?
To me, the most important thing that we're dealing with right now is loneliness. We saw so much of that during the pandemic, and post pandemic, it continues to get worse and worse. So many people that used to go to work in person and rub elbows with coworkers now do so remotely because it's more convenient. And, what it's doing to mental health to not have as much person to person connection. As AI becomes bigger and bigger and screens as social media become bigger, people oftentimes have hundreds of friends on some of the social media platforms, but they really don't have the depth of connection that they need. And so most of the time when someone comes to therapy, there is a piece of that that is part of what is going on. So just a feeling really alone.
Yeah, I can identify with that, certainly in my own life with those close to me. Let's come back to that because that's a big topic, and I'd like to explore that more deeply. And before we do that, I'd love to understand this transition a bit more. Do you feel your business background gave you an edge when you came into building your practice?
Absolutely. I've seen that many people in the therapy world, their primary expertise and passion is in therapy itself, and have little to no business background. Because I had that to start, that was always something that made it pretty easy for me to move full force into building a group practice.
Oh, that's great. What mindset shifts, maybe if I could use that term, were required for you to go from, a solo practitioner to business leader? I imagine you started the practice as an individual and then grew from there. Could you shed some light on that for us?
Yeah, I think I always had this in mind, that I was going to build a group practice. And that's why I never named the practice after myself, which many therapists, have, whatever, Joe Smith and Associates or something like that. I knew I wanted to have a group practice, and the mindset shift really didn't happen until we moved from 12 to 20, which we did really quickly in the pandemic. I was always kind of on this trajectory of once I was filled, I could bring on somebody else and fill them and bring on somebody else and fill them. But once we expanded geographically to multiple states, then it became a very, very different mindset. I can't clone myself. And so even when you hire someone to take on that role of doing the local networking and so forth, it's a much more challenging um, way of being. So I had to really shift to figuring out A, how do I get people to have that skill set? And then B, um, we needed to take a real step back and a huge step forward on the marketing front.
Yeah, so you've grown now to what, 60 therapists across 10 locations, is it?
10 physical locations were in 7 states.
Amazing, and that's no small feat. What was the first major scaling decision that you had to make when you think back on it?
Yeah. So what I did was I hired clinical directors, people from within, and gave them, a partnership opportunity where they had responsibility for a location. And so we'd hire people for that location. They were responsible for the administration, the management and coaching, the marketing, and supervision when we hired people that required supervision under their licensure. So that was, taking it from me to others was a big shift in how we ran things. That was one of the biggest. The other thing was really as we continued to grow, our admin team couldn't support this new model the way it needed to. So we really had to scale up with administrative people, bring in a full-time marketing team, operations, finance, all of the various things. We have one team who all they do is kind of coordinate between clinical and operations. So there's a lot of moving parts to make all of the wheels go around in something like that.
I can only imagine what were some of the distinct points. You mentioned the shift from 12 to 20
Yeah.
as being important in your growth. Were there other distinct points in growing your practice that carried specific challenges? I mean, for example, a lot of therapists out there, maybe they're in business by themselves, as you mentioned, or maybe they have a partner. Could you share with us some of the challenges going from 1 to 2 and 2 to 20 or 12 to 20, as you mentioned, all the way up to where you are now?
Yeah, I could write the book on what not to do. Do this instead. So what I had done was I created a very cumbersome and complicated system. I created a system in which I had seven different entities. Each location was its own separate business. What that created was a nightmare for administration, a huge expense burden for tax preparation and for payroll processing. We couldn't use a standard payroll processing company because our business was just too complicated. We've had an accounting firm not want to take us on because we're too complicated. So that was the biggest mistake that I made is really wanting to make everyone happy and have this separate entity situation. What I found out later was that I could accomplish the same thing, but do it differently. So we are in the process of finalizing a structure change where we are not multiple separate companies, where it's one basic company. And that is something I never would have repeated again. And then the other thing is that I incentivized people in a way that didn't match the company's goals. So I took some therapist and I incentivized them based on, they got to keep a bigger split of their own clinical work, which incentivized them to keep bigger caseloads themselves instead of managing and coaching their team. So that's something that we fixed quickly as well.
Wow. Well, let's pick at this a little bit because you've given two really great insights here. If you were to go back in time and let's say now you're a consultant, you're advising someone like yourself who is expanding their practice, what would you say to them about how to set up the practice for scale?
Absolutely, and funny that you say it that way because we are coaching other people, and we do a team coaching program, so it's not
Oh,
just me, but our whole team. So, I would help to really create the structure with someone and walk through what works, what doesn't work, and how you can accomplish all of the goals where so for me, it's really important that my team members have a path to stay with a company. Most group practices, people come, they stay for a period of time, but from a professional development standpoint and a financial standpoint, they can't stay. At some point, they leave and go off and do their own thing. I was able to create a model where they actually can stay, where there's a path for growth within the business. And that was really, really important to me because in the therapy world, you want to have great people and you want them to be able to stay with you. You don't want to continually be turning over your team. So structure is really important. I that is the number one focus. The other thing is having resources outside of your business. I'm a member of EO, the entrepreneur organization. That's been really, really important to me. Um, every problem I've faced, I've had a team of people that could experience share what they've been through to, help me offset those challenges. So, having those kinds of resources become really, really important.
maybe a thought here. It sounds to me like you've got great support, that you have learned the importance of that. You mentioned the financial structure and the setup and what have you. If you were to advise somebody who's creating a practice, talk a little bit about your advisory team, loosely using that term, right? But who's in it? Who are the people that you rely most on for opinions? Who's in the inner circle, who's on the periphery? Could you explain that a little bit? It sounds like that was important for you in growing.
Sure. Well, in EO, I have a forum, and so it's a group of 8 of us, that we, meet once a month, and we go through these kinds of things. I'm also in, a program called Entrepreneurial Masters Program. It's, through EO, and it's given at MIT, and so I have a mastermind group from that organization, and that gives me access to just incredible, mentors and speakers. I mean, I met with someone, 2 days ago who's a fantastic M&A lawyer in DC who I met through that program. So there's just a lot of resources. I think the key people are having really strong marketing people. And if you don't have someone on your team, you could hire somebody in a fractional way to give you what you need without breaking the bank. I have an expert SEO person on our team, working towards finding an expert and pretty close AI person on our team. So having those resources become really important.
Oh, that's great. You mentioned these additional skills you're bringing into your practice. Let's talk about that a little bit. I know you've grown not only depth in your practice, but also geographically in terms of locations. What's your philosophy when it comes to hiring? What are you looking for in a therapist? And maybe what are you looking for in support staff?
Absolutely. So we run on a system called EOS. It's an entrepreneurial operating system. And within that system, we're really focused on our core values. And so um, our leadership team determined what our core values are and who we are. Everyone on our team knows what those core values are. And we hire according to those core values. If we need to fire, it's because somebody's not meeting the core values. And we live and breathe them. So our core values are passionate, connected, motivated to grow, playful, radical ownership, and adherence to gold standard. And we live and breathe those things. So we do quarterly reviews and self reviews where you measure yourself against our core values. But if someone doesn't meet those, if I'm interviewing someone and I'm not feeling that they're passionate or motivated to grow, then they're not a candidate for us.
Well, you mentioned EOS. I have a friend of mine, used to work with him, and he's now an EOS advisor. Sounds like that's an important backbone to your work. Could you tell me more about the role that EOS has played in helping you build your practice?
Yeah, there are a lot of platforms like EOS. My personal philosophy is it doesn't necessarily matter so much which one you use, but but it's important to use one and stick with it. And to platforms like this create a cadence of how often you meet, how you function. With EOS specifically, there's a big focus on rocks. We call them rocks, but they're basically your goals, and they're 3-month goals. And you have company rocks, and then each individual has their rocks. And so you're meeting every single week, and you're going through the meeting in a standard order of what happens when, but it keeps you focused on those rocks. Um, so you meet, you go through the to-do list that was assigned the week before, and you need to knock out all of those. And then when you go through issues that the company has, you identify issues throughout the week, and you go through them as a team, and you IDS them, you identify them, you describe them, and you solve them. And so doing that as a team keeps things moving forward fast.
Well, that's probably been fuel for your growth. I know you've expanded not only to multiple locations, but now multiple states. And so, tell me, how do you maintain clinical excellence and consistency across so many, providers and states?
Yeah. So one of the people that serves on our leadership team is overseeing all of the adherence, and making sure that every modality that we have, one of our brand promises, if we say that we do something, we have someone on our team who is an expert in that modality. We've identified for every modality we provide, we know what the gold standard of training is for that, and we know how to make sure people maintain that gold standard of treatment post training. So we are really careful to make sure people go to the right training programs, and that they're carrying through that modality correctly. For example, DBT. If you go to psychology today, everyone is doing DBT. There are very few people that are providing DBT adherently, and quite honestly, that's criminal because a lot of times in DBT, you're treating clients who are suicidal, and people are coming in for treatment, and they're doing flavor of the week therapy and talk therapy that's not DBT. So it is really important, and our team is very passionate about doing what we say we're going to do, whether it's Gottman, DBT, EMDR, ART. We're really committed to doing it. It's the number one thing is that we have that commitment to do what we say we're going to do, and we only work with treatments that are evidence based and relatively short term.
So that's clear that you set a high standard, you enforce that standard, you have a process or operating system that helps you drive that. Let's talk a minute about funding this expansion. I would love to just reflect back on this expansive part of your practice. Did you self fund that expansion, or did you have outside investors or other partners involved? How did you go about funding that?
I have self-funded it, and it's been quite a struggle. It's not been easy, but, in the beginning, it wasn't that difficult because, the way the model works, we didn't have a lot of admin cost in the beginning. We had a part-time person and brought the first couple of people on board, and because we're therapists, we work on a split basis, so I didn't have to fund salaries in the beginning. I had to come up with the lease and space and things like that. But, I really heavily believed in investing in myself and the practice and the mission. So little by little was able to continue to fund. We did come through a tough period of time when we started to expand very quickly post pandemic, where I had to infuse a significant amount of money into the business, which was difficult to do. But again, believing in the mission, believing in the passion, and it's turned around since, and it's been quite the growth curve.
I can clearly hear that, and I'm sure our audience is pretty astounded by how you've come to do that. Let's talk about that. Doesn't just happen, right? It happens with purpose and thoughtfulness. You've mentioned some of the tools in your bag that have helped you do that. Let's talk for a minute about back-end systems or technology and team roles. Could you explain maybe a little bit about how you've leveraged back-end systems or specific individuals or specific roles that have been critical in enabling this growth of yours?
Yeah. One thing that's really challenging for us is we have to use an electronic medical records system, and it doesn't integrate with anything. I mean, there's a CRM that could no, the CRM doesn't connect with it at all. There's one platform that connects with it a tiny bit, but you can't really connect with it. So we've had to be really creative with other things. We have a CRM. We have another platform that can pull as if they're another therapist on our electronic medical records and give us some basic data related to our therapist and their retention rates and acquisition rates and things like that. Um, we have created our own systems that are able to pull from, with a cut and paste from our EMR into this system and really give us all of the data that we need, the wrap rates for each clinician, forecasting for the future, our clear profitability that's not so much after the fact like QuickBooks is, which of course we use as well. So it's we've had to do a lot of workarounds because of limitations in the medical field, which I'm sure many of the listeners also have. But it's really important to have the data. If you don't have data, you're throwing spaghetti against the wall and hoping something sticks. And we were doing that on the marketing front for a decent period of time, and spending money on not knowing what works, what doesn't work, and really important at that point to invest in a CRM and really make sure you know what's coming from where and are able to have accurate records of that.
And in building that out, sounds like you've built some tools yourself to work around constraints.
Mhm.
Have you incorporated AI or automation into your practice? For example, are you using tools for scheduling, triage, note taking, those kinds of things, or elsewhere in your practice?
Um, I use and our team uses AI quite a bit for business structure questions and ideas and how to run meetings and things like that. We have not incorporated it yet into therapy because we will make sure that it's 100% secure before we do so. I'm heavily researching opportunities and I do see some potential of ways that AI can work with us and help us to help more people faster and help clients to decrease their cost of therapy because things can be treatment plans can be executed faster and more clearly. So we're in the process of looking at that, but we are going to be very, very careful and make sure we are completely certain it is the right platform.
Well, that's good that you're being diligent. I want to come back to this team roles perspective. Who is your right hand in the practice? Number one, if you wouldn't mind sharing that. And also, you mentioned clinical directors for these various locations. Could you talk about, I'm going to use the term loosely since we're here in the DC area, right? Command and control structure. How do you lead the team? Who are the key roles in your leadership group?
Yeah. So I have a couple of right-hand people, but so one is my marketing director of marketing. She is fantastic. Her name is Jennifer. She really takes full ownership of marketing. She's as passionate as I am about the business. Fully takes that on. I have someone by the name of Leah who takes on all of the HR roles, handles all of the recruiting and interviewing. I have someone named Emily who does all of our operations, and she's fantastic. I have someone, Caroline, who does the integration between clinical and operations and making sure everybody knows what everybody is doing and messages are passed back and forth and systems are put in place to make everything efficient. And then I have someone named Molly who heads up our intake coordinators, and they're the ones who are the first point of contact for every new client. So it's a big team effort. And then of course our clinical directors, there are four of them that are very strong, and we have four clinical managers, which is one step below becoming a clinical director. All 16, there's 16 of us in total. We all sit together every quarter to plan out the quarter, and then we break into smaller groups from there. And it's growing and it's changing and evolving over time. We used to have 5 people on the leadership team. We've since changed the structure to have everybody's voice in the room, and we'll see where we go from there.
Well, that's great. And I know having a team helps people succeed in life. Sounds like you've got a lot of that figured out and dialed in. Congratulations on being able to do that with such fantastic talent. I want to talk for a minute about the clinical side of things. You've trained, and many of your therapists are trained in DBT, EMDR, ART, Gottman, and more. You mentioned several of those earlier. How do you decide what tools to use, what modalities to use? How do you train your team and ensure that high standard you mentioned earlier in our conversation?
Absolutely. So when someone reaches out to us, the intake coordinators have been significantly trained in all of our modalities. They know a decent amount about all of them. Most of that training comes from me and from some video trainings that we have internally. Um, and so there are certain times that it's really clear what type of therapy someone needs, and there are other times it's not so clear. Um, in those occasions where it's not as clear, so I will often get involved. I like to kind of play a quarterback role in care coordination for our clients. It's really important that they're matched with the right therapist. That is one of our brand promises, that we guarantee that. So if we mismatch someone, we will place them with someone else at no cost. So really, really important that we do it right. And I will get involved to make sure, because there are times that someone will come in asking for a certain modality or coming in with a certain symptom, and it's not as crystal clear, because DBT is really for people who need work on emotional regulation. um, and there are other times where, is that because of an underneath trauma? Are they ready to go right into trauma work like EMDR, or is it best to go into DBT first and deal with the behaviors that are getting in the way of meeting their life goals? And so it really depends. But and then we have some nuanced side things we do. We do ERP for people with OCD, but there are one or two people only that focus on those. And so we know immediately, okay, they're calling for this. This is where they need to go.
Yeah, it's interesting. I just had a guest on the show talking about OCD and NERP. Walk us through the client intake process, if you could, at Counseling Center Group today. How do you go about actually matching clients with the right therapist and modality?
So they'll call or send a form, and we contact them immediately, hopefully within an hour or so. And we will really take the time to understand why they're calling, what are they looking for, what do they need. Um, right off the bat, sometimes it's pretty clear. They're coming for couples therapy. Okay. Well, then, we have two avenues. Gottman is the one we do the most, but we do have one individual who does Imago. So we do some fact finding to find out what they need. What are the primary problems that they're coming in to solve? And then we're really kind of figuring out, okay, who is going to be the best match for this person. And then there are other things. There's personality styles. I know when someone comes in for depression, I know I'm going to send them to this one specific person um, as my number one choice. I know if they come in for OCD, who they're going to go to. I know if they are suicidal or self harming. These are the six people that are the most readily available for an adolescent in that situation. And here are the others for, adults. And if it's a young child with those things, I know that they need DBTC, which is a family oriented DBT protocol where the whole family engages in the treatment. So, most of the time when you know what they're coming in for, it's a pretty clearly able to navigate. And our CRM also filters. So you put in the CRM what's a state, obviously what state are they in, because we have to be within the jurisdiction of our licensure, and what kinds of modalities or age and things like that, and then it gives us a list of the possible therapist, and then we're able to match from there.
So you've got a mixture of systems and data that's driving that, and then this relational intuitive side of this matching process that you quarterback. How do you balance that, especially in a practice at your scale? How do you balance having a data-driven mindset with systems, et cetera, and yet this relational intuitive side of therapy?
It's really um it's not balancing two things, it's one thing. I mean, think about what we do. We're helping people. And so the data gives us information that enables us to A, help more people, and B, make sure that we're actually helping them. And so it's all one and the same. The data is so important for the care that we're providing. It's not separate like we're working at sales numbers and data versus helping people. It's all the same. So if we are really measuring how our clients are doing post 3 sessions, post 6 sessions, whether or not they're improving, if we're really measuring our therapist and their retention rates and whether or not they're keeping a client from even from intake into first session, we're having more and more information so that we can help more people. And, keeping data as well on whether or not our therapists are all maintaining adherence to the modality in which they provide becomes really important because we have to do what we say we're going to do. That is imperative that when a client comes in for a certain treatment, they're getting that treatment and not just let's talk about what happened this week. Um, really committed to that.
Well, you've got a really deep bench of staff, as you mentioned, of therapists, excuse me. And I'd like to maybe understand a little bit about how you support your early career therapists as you're bringing them into the practice while maintaining these high standards. Could you share a little bit about that?
Yes, when we bring somebody on board, we will typically send them to a specific training for DBT. We want everyone to be trained in DBT in almost all cases, unless they have some other side specialty that is evidence based and fits into our model in some way. But the foundation of what we do, and really every modality, has a basis in emotion regulation. So we'll send them to that training and we continue on with additional trainings. I train our team twice a week. I do a DBT experiential skills training once a week for our team. And I also do a group supervision weekly for our team. And in addition to that, I do many, many internal trainings, as do other people on our team. So we have quite a few of us who are doing internal trainings. You can't just stop at one training and then go. We're continually doing internal trainings. You go to a training, especially if the training was online, it's really hard to retain information. So from our point of view, we want to give them the repetition and frequency of learning this material, but also check for retention and generalization, making sure that they're actually able to repeat back what's happening. For example, in DBT, the whole entire modality is based upon a life worth living goal. So early on in the treatment, we identify with the client what is your life worth living goal, and if they don't know, we help them to piece that together. And the whole entire treatment is based upon getting to that goal. So you're looking at what is getting in the way of that goal and small incremental steps to getting that goal. If you talk to many people out there who are providing DBT or say they're providing DBT and ask what their client's life worth living goal is, they might not even know. Like, then you're not doing the treatment then. So we are really making sure every one of our therapists is working according to the structure and you're in session and you're working um, according to a hierarchy of the most important things first. So we are continually making sure that if we are providing that modality, we're doing so. And the same goes for ART, EMDR, whatever it is, we're making sure that we're doing it correctly.
You mentioned earlier in our conversation loneliness and this challenge that you're passionate about. It seems to me, as you have said, that if it's underlying so many different things, that that is really a core issue. Could you talk a little bit about how you see loneliness manifesting itself in these different client engagements? Is it common throughout? Is it common in most? Shed, if you would, a little bit about your perspective on loneliness.
Yeah. So before the Surgeon General announced loneliness as being our biggest epidemic, I've been saying that for years. We all feel lonely. It's everywhere and it's getting worse and worse and worse. And I believe I have many of the solutions to it. And some of it is piece that we're going to be rolling out soon, which I'm really, really excited about and passionate about, and honestly feel like it's my true calling. I started this company because of loneliness. Okay, I was in solo private practice. It's isolating. I had an office mate. You know, I subletted an office space, and I'd see her in the hall once in a while and say hello. But coming from marketing and business, where you're used to collaborating and having meetings and being in person, to solo private practice, it was awful. So I decided, okay, I'm going to build a community. So, you know, we are a community of therapists serving a community of clients. And, you know, anytime someone joins our practice, they get onboarded. And one of the things in their onboarding is they receive a book from us. It's the book Tribe by Sebastian Younger. And it's about, you know, connection. And so that's who we are. That's what we are. And we think about that also from the perspective of our clients. Um, I'm fortunate enough to be in two organizations. One is through Leadership Lab, and the other is EO. And both of those organizations, I sit on a forum, and a forum is an organization where you meet once a month for half a day, and then you have retreats. And they're my people, right? So if I'm feeling really alone or if I'm having a rough spell in life, I know it's okay. I'll see my people in 2 more weeks, or I could reach out to them anytime in between. Um, and that has been so valuable to me. And then I think about the fact that most people don't have anything like that. And then, you know, there's group therapy, and we do a tremendous amount of group therapy, which offers some pieces of that. But a lot of the rules around therapy prohibit people from connecting in between. And so, what we're going to be building out is an opportunity for people to have something similar to that model. And it will also be accessible to all. And I'm really, really excited about that. Um, it's just we need connection, and so many people are turning to their phones or to, you know, streaming shows to fill that gap, and it doesn't solve the problem. And so, you know, having connection and person to person, in person, whenever possible, is really important. And then I also have some systems to help people take a look at their current social circle and really you know, there's a system in which we kind of figure out who meets two pieces of criteria, and if they do, they can be in my inner circle, and I'm going to actually ask them, and this is how I do it, and I'm going to actually commit more time to these 6 people that I land up with, instead of spreading my time thin between these 100 people and efforting for a coffee twice a year with this friend or that friend, which feels great at the moment, but it doesn't have a lasting impact.
That's exciting. I think everybody could use that, especially in this era of doom scrolling. One, two, work from home. Three, partial back in the office, maybe. And I know that that is really needed. I'm excited to see what you have in store. Let's take a step, maybe a step back and look more broadly. I'd love to get your perspective looking at the broad mental health landscape. Where do you think the biggest gaps or conversely opportunities are?
I feel, oh, I want to be careful about how I say this. I feel that so many people go into this field and they pursue it based on their own interests or challenges, and they're not looking at the science. And so often people go to therapy and they come in and they talk about what happened this week, and the therapist will validate them and help them to feel better about this week and provide some tools perhaps. And then they come in the next week with another set of problems. And it just becomes, you know, I think of the game Whack-A-Mole, the carnival game, you know, so it's like each week a new thing pops up and they're not moving forward. I really wish more practitioners out there would be as committed to actually providing treatment that works and sticking to it to a T, and not just, you know, doing what they feel like doing. And absolutely the number one most important um, thing for client outcome is the therapeutic relationship. That is very true, but you can't only depend on that. It's really important that you're helping clients to move forward. And the other piece um, that concerns me is how often therapists out there are creating dependency on therapy. Um, and that's why we're really committed, when possible, to provide short-term therapy. Um, you never want to have someone saying, "Well, I'll figure out what to do after I talk to my therapist." We want to empower our clients to learn how to make those decisions themselves.
Yeah, you have an emphasis, it sounds like, on relatively short-term evidence-based treatment, and that model is clearly important to you. Let's take a look to the schoolhouse now, and let's imagine that there are those on this listening to this episode who are in advanced schooling. Maybe they're going to be out in active practice soon. If you could speak directly to them, what advice would you have for them coming out into practice?
It's really important to decide what you want to specialize in. You do not get what you need from graduate school or a doctorate program to provide therapy the way um, advanced training can provide benefits later. It's really important to specialize in something and decide to do so full force, to decide I'm going to pursue working with this type of population or this type of modality and get trained so that you can become um, someone who has expertise in that area. Um, Really avoiding being, someone who is eclectic. A lot of people want to be eclectic. Instead, have a specialty, learn it well, build up your confidence in that area. Um, Work for a practice that's going to support you well in your training and in development. Um, but I would say really committing to what you want to do and knowing you could change later, but really starting with a direction becomes really important.
Great advice. What is the biggest challenge that you face today in your practice?
From a business perspective, it is, we can't integrate with our electronic medical records in the way in which we need. So we've had to do a lot of roundabout ways to capture the data that we need. That is very, very challenging. Um, that is challenging, and the landscape. We're out of network, okay? And we are out of network for quite a few reasons. The main reason is we really want to provide top level of treatment to our clients, and the amount of training and expertise that it requires to do so is significant, and we also really value privacy. We want our team to be determining the treatment plan, not an outside organization, and that becomes challenging because a lot of times people don't understand, you know, why that would be, or believe that when their insurance carrier tells them, "Oh, we have, you know, providers that are in network that provide X, Y, and Z," and oftentimes they don't really. So it's challenging because you want to um, do that. I mean, we've met that challenge. We have a strong internship program, and we have newer therapists, so we're able to provide cost-effective therapy for all. But it is a challenge, in just explaining to people that I look at it like, if you have a new job and it's 5 miles away and you need a way to get to the job and there's no public transportation, you could buy a car or buy a bicycle. And so, a bicycle will get you to work, but it's not the same. They're different qualities, and so, if it's pouring rain or snowing, it might be harder to get to work on a bicycle. So in the therapy world, oftentimes people are not comparing apples to apples when they're looking at different options, and really making sure that, whoever you're working with is committed to doing what they say they're doing.
Well, let's look forward. What is next for the counseling center group? Is it more locations, tech integration, as you mentioned, or new client populations? Love to understand where you're headed as a practice.
Yeah, our growth strategy has always been based on our team. We are not looking to just grow in random places and seek random people. When we have a team member who um, really is a superstar and wants to move up, we promote from within and we give them opportunities to start building their own team. So it's more of an organic way of growing. The state to state thing sometimes happens in the same way. It does happen in the same way. We have someone. Um, the way New York happened is we had someone moving to New York that was a superstar. So okay, we'll open in New York, and then we had one of our New York people who was a superstar move to New Jersey. Okay, we have a New Jersey team. Same happened with Virginia and DC and Florida, and we're about to open in Georgia. So it's really it's not, it's not us sitting in a conference room saying, "Oh, let's open up in North Carolina." We'll open up in North Carolina if and when we have a superstar who's going to do it right.
So doing so with intention, right, rather than just opportunity.
Correct.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, Marjorie, we wrap up all of our shows with a lightning round. These are
Okay.
quick questions designed
Okay.
for quick answers. First thing that comes to mind. Are
Okay.
you ready?
Sure.
All right, let's do it. If you had to pick one, what is your favorite therapy modality right now?
TBT.
What is one leadership lesson that took you too long to learn?
I'm still learning it. It's to not talk first, to let others on my team talk and keep my mouth shut and add later.
What AI tool or admin system do you wish existed for therapy?
Integration with our EMR.
Thought you might say that. What is one book that has had a significant impact on you personally or professionally?
The 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership.
Okay. And finally, what is your favorite way to unwind after a day of deep work?
Mm. To be outside. Really anything outside in nature, that fuels me.
You've got a kindred spirit in me on that one. Marjorie Kreppel, it has been an honor and a pleasure. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Doc Secret.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it.
If you liked today's episode, please like and subscribe. And most importantly, share this podcast with others you think may benefit from the Doc Secrets shared here today. Thanks for joining us on today's episode, and we'll see you next time.